Good day, everyone. I am Nika Bawat, together with Renalyn Sabangan and Catherine de Guzman. And we are going to present our activity for the Teaching Learning Resources, ICT, and the Curriculum. So, at the end of this activity, the FS student must be able to achieve the following learning outcomes. Number one, identify what type of curriculum are utilized in depth ed schools. Number two, describe how teaching and learning processes are sequenced to meet the curricular needs or requirements. Number three, determine the teaching learning resources and ICT that facilitate teaching learning process. And number four, evaluate the resources used in the learning environment. So here's our observation report. So complete the table below by identifying the type of curriculum that exists in the depth ed schools or laboratory integrated schools. So we have here the 7 type of curriculum, and the number one is recommended curriculum. And the example of this is K to 12 science curriculum for grade 7, and it is where located Department of Education and Commission on Higher Education or SHED. So the description of this is it identifies the skills, concepts, and content that will be emphasized throughout the learning process. So number two, written curriculum. The example of this is the syllabi course of study, module, books, or instructional guides, and lesson plan. Were located in Deped Order number 42S 206, and it is a specific and intends to ensure that the educational goals of the system are being accomplished at a school. So number three, tough curriculum plan activities which are put into action. Were located to teaching styles or implementations. And the description of this is these are the varied activities that are implemented to arrive at the objectives or purposes of the written curriculum. So number four, we have supported curriculum. The example of this is materials like books, charts, posters, worksheets, or non-print materials like PowerPoint presentations, movies, slides, models, and mock-ups. So it is located in DepEd order number 018S 2020. It is having all the facilities and materials that support or help will the teacher in implementing the curriculum to have a successful teaching. So number five, assess curriculum. The example of this is state test, standardized test, distinct test, and teacher-made test. It is located to Dep Ed Order number 8S205, refers to the tested or evaluated curriculum. Evaluation are being done by the teachers to determine the extent of teaching or to tell if the students are progressing. Number six, learn curriculum. The example of this is physical condition, peer influence, teacher learner interaction. It is located to learning outcomes and objectives. So the description of this is learning outcomes are indicated by the results of the test and changes in behavior. The last is hidden curriculum. It refers to the unwritten, unofficial, and often unintended lessons, values, and perspectives that students learn in school. It is located within the formal curriculum of a school, and the description of this is it can be defined as the lesson that are taught informally and usually unintentionally in a school system.
For our second observation report, pair or compare with a lesson plan, downloaded or borrowed. Note your observation on the design on how it was implemented or translated into a daily lesson to meet the curriculum requirement. The first one is under the elements components of a curriculum. Number one is the behavioral objectives or desired learning outcomes. In the behavioral objective, there are preparatory activities like classroom management, prayer, checking of attendance, and motivation, or the review. For the desired learning objectives, which compose of three domains of learning where the students should attain at the end of the lesson. For the second is the content. This one is discusses the specific topic and it emphasizes the knowledge that should be learned by the student. For the third one is teaching and learning methods or strategies. In this part of curriculum component, they use cooperative learning through groupings and a lecture for the proper discussion of the content. They also will they also use Wilmap as a graphic organizer to present the topic. Fourth is the assessment or evaluation. So, at the end of the lesson, there's a short quiz and they also practice the art of questioning. These questions will be asked to the student for them to internalize what they have learned.
So at this part, we have the using the borrowed or downloaded lesson plan. Try to dissect parts and identify what resources, including ICT, were utilized to facilitate teaching learning process. So we have there two columns wherein the first column is procedure and the second one is the ICT and the non-ICT resources. So for our procedure, we have there motivation. So in executing motivation during the teaching learning process, the teacher use word cards. Next, for the presentation of the lesson, the teacher use the previous instructional materials, which are the word cards. And for the third one, we have there the development of the lesson. So in this part, the teacher utilize the teacher's book to serve as their guide in discussing or delivering the lesson to the learners. So next is the generalization or the closure. So to generalize the lesson, the teacher only asks the learners about the lesson, and in this part, there is no ICT and non-ICT resources were used. Next, we have there the application or the enrichment fixing skills. So in this part naman, there is no ICT and non-ICT resources used by the teacher. Next, evaluation or the assessment. So in this part, the teacher only used worksheets to evaluate the learner's knowledge with regards to their lesson. And for answering this question, after your observation, what did you notice about the flow of activities and the congruence of each activity to the objective or the intended learning outcome? And elucidate your answer. So, based on our observation, the flow of activities and the congruence of each activity to the intended learning outcomes is related. It has the clear flow and have the development and mastery of the lesson. And moreover, the learning activities relates to the lesson, therefore the intended learning outcomes is achieved.
So for this part, we have the analyze part. So the question is, how did you know that there exists such curriculum in the DepEd schools or laboratory schools? So the DepEd school curriculum exists to supply teacher guidebook materials, textbook for students, as well as specific learning objectives that must be met. Laboratory school curriculum, on the other hand, contains a set of specially constructed rooms with comprehensive equipment and rigorous standards for education. For the second question, how can educational experiences be effectively organized and contribute to the attainment of objectives or intended learning outcomes? Extend the learning by requiring the learners to create another scenario to apply the new skill or knowledge and require them to explain the connection.
For the last question, from the last lesson plan, evaluate the resources and compare it with the actual resources utilized in the classroom. For the lesson plan the teacher used to the learners, the resources stated and the actual resources utilized are congruent. This means that the institution requires the educators to be reflective and materialized on their lesson planning. The resources that are stated in the lesson plan are books, ICT resources like use of YouTube and some certain website, and PowerPoint presentation materialized in the actual lecture.
So for our reflection, question number one, as a pre-service teacher, how do you plan, manage, and implement developmentally sequenced teaching and learning process to meet curriculum requirement in varied teaching contexts? So as a pre-service teacher, we and implement developmentally sequenced teaching and learning process by first creating learning outcomes which considering the learning activities suitable to the learners. Apart from that, the content of the lesson must be connected or aligned to the curriculum guide for the teacher to avoid confusion during the discussion. And utilizing instructional materials that are pertinent to the content is also significant since it is considered as the tangible curriculum. Therefore, it is a must to wisely use an appropriate material to effectively deliver the lessons to the learners.
For the question number 2, how do you set achievable and appropriate learning outcomes which are aligned with learning competencies? So, choosing activities that generate actions connected with the keywords in the learning outcomes is one way to set attainable and acceptable learning outcomes that are aligned with learning competencies. Students should be able to build and demonstrate their knowledge through a variety of tests, activities, and projects that allow them to gain a broader understanding of the challenges they encounter as they try to better understand the subject.
And for our third question, it is same with the question number one. So our answer is as a pre-service teacher, I or we will plan, manage, and implement developmentally sequenced teaching and learning process by first creating our learning outcomes, which are or which considering the learning activities that are appropriate or suitable to our learners. So apart from that, the content of the lesson must be connected or aligned to the curriculum guide for the teacher to avoid confusion during the discussion. And lastly, on utilizing instructional materials that are pertinent to the content is significant since it is considered as the tangible curriculum. Therefore, it is a must to wisely use an appropriate material to effectively deliver the lesson to the learners.
And for the last question, how do you set achievable and appropriate learning outcomes which are aligned with learning competencies? Choosing activities that generate actions connected with the keywords in the learning outcomes is one way to set attainable and acceptable learning outcomes that are aligned with learning competencies. Students should be able to build and demonstrate their knowledge through a variety of tests, activities, and projects that allow them to gain a broader understanding of the challenges they encounter as they try to better understand the subject.
So here our documentations or evidences. So here are our interns. We're in Pagal Elementary School. We have um, Miss April Joy M. Austria, yours truly, Ranalyn C. Sabangan, Jacqueline Cano, and Nika Bawa. For our for Central 1 and Central 2 Elementary School, we have there Miss Maya Olivia M. Cano and Miss Catherine M. De Guzman. For Kalubawan Elementary School, we have Miss Sarah Jane Ramos and Jenny Velasquez. And for Agdao Integrated School, we have Miss Ina Pidlawan. And for Bacnar Elementary School, we have Miss Danica Sumon. So again, we are the Group 2, and thank you for listening.